David Gaughran, as you said. I'm medium height. I'm quite hairy. I write historical fiction under this name, science fiction under another name, and non-fiction under this name as well, if that isn't too confusing. I found the whole process extremely interesting because I had done one audiobook before back in 2014 or 15, but it was with kind of a friend of mine. So I didn't go through the normal process that people would normally do. So this was all kind of new to me. But the whole process was pretty slick. Like I think there's like a little microphone symbol or something now on the Draft to Digital dashboard. And if you click that, it ports you across directly to Findaway Voices, and it actually copies across the metadata, the book categories, I think even the book file as well. So, if you're doing it, make sure the latest version of your book file is there, because that's what the narrator will work from. But in terms of which book, I decided to go for Strangers to Superfans, and I definitely think I made the right choice, because it's a book that I think is going to be quite evergreen. It's not something like a book about ad tactics or something, which might have to be updated every year. I think because this is more about marketing theory, even though it's quite a hands-on book. It's more about marketing theory and how you need to kind of restructure your business and how you need to think about readers and how you're marketing to them. The thing that struck me as interesting right from the start was Findaway asked her some really, really interesting questions about what kind of narrator you were looking for. Some of them I expected, things like the tone or pitch or the gender, or if you need various accents for your book. It was just much more detailed than I expected. And it really made me think about that in a way that I hadn't before. So it was just going through that process made me realize that the kind of things that I actually wanted from a narrator, because I didn't really know. Because to be honest with you, I don't listen to a lot of audiobooks personally. So I didn't know what kind of qualities I needed in a narrator, but the actual questionnaire that they make you fill out actually really made me think about it, and really made me kind of realize that I wanted different things out of a narrator than I thought. Like, for example, as I said, this is a book about marketing theory, which on the face of it isn't the most exciting topic in the world, but my style with this kind of book tends to be a little bit irreverent. And there's a lot of humor in the books, and kind of asides which don't really kind of non sequiturs, to try and keep the text interesting and stop people falling asleep along the way when you're talking about marketing theory. So I wanted a narrator. Well, I realized after going through the questionnaire process they make you fill out, that I wanted a narrator who had a very warm tone, someone who could kind of bring the text to life, because it's nonfiction, it's a technical subject. It's not like a novel which has inbuilt drama that's going to keep people kind of glued to the page. And what was fascinating to me was I think Findaway came back after about a week with a short list of maybe 10 narrators, and even though I could see straight away that some of them were suitable in what I was looking for, and some of them were less suitable, I could see why they picked each one of them. Do you know what I mean? Like, it mapped. I could see that guy was because I ticked this box, or I answered that question that way. That's why they selected this guy. And they all had similar qualities, but on a kind of a spectrum. So some of them would have a very warm or kind of honey voice. Some of them had a very playful or light or reverent tone, because they were the things that I'd selected along the way. I actually didn't express a gender preference during the questionnaire process, because I wasn't totally sure. I had a slight preference for picking a female narrator, but I wanted to hear all the auditions before I totally decided that. And I was thinking, that because I've actually been thinking of recording some audiobooks myself, and I might do that for fiction, even though that's quite an involved process, and I'm not sure if I want to go down that route. But I was thinking, if it's not going to be me narrating the book, then it should be someone who's really not me. And so then when I heard the shortlist of people, I knew it had to be an American woman was going to be perfect. It just kind of worked. There was actually one or two lines that we nixed along the way just because they didn't translate into audio, and it's really interesting hearing that, hearing your book in that different context. You realize there's some textual jokes you might make that don't work in audio, but the narrator was actually really good at highlighting those as well, or sometimes just improvising a way around them. But yeah, like there was only one part of the book where I thought it was odd that I was speaking with a female American voice, but most of the time it worked perfectly well. When you get your I don't know if everyone gets a short list of 10. I had a short list of 10 narrators, and at this point you haven't heard any of them read your book yet. They just have they have their bio that the narrator has filled out themselves, explaining what kind of work they do and what they specialize in. And then you can listen to samples from everything that they've actually recorded previously with Findaway. So I think it's probably the retail sample, or maybe they choose the sample themselves just to display a range of their work. So I could actually go in and listen for each narrator. They might have had 5 or 6 different samples, different types of nonfiction, also fiction if I wanted to listen to those, just to see the different things they could do with their voice. And it was really surprising to me how much these guys could change their voice depending on what they were reading. So, you know, it's like the tone in a travel book might be very different to a book on spirituality, for example. And seeing that flexibility actually kind of made the decision harder, because, you know, you'd listen to one sample from a guy and you think, oh, he's not the guy. You know, you often know straight away whether someone's a good candidate or not. But then you'd listen to a different sample of their work and you're like, oh, I like that one. So it's actually, I think it's good to go through and listen to all the samples, even if, you know, you're recording a book on marketing, and I think listen to their samples for their thriller and science fiction stuff, just to get a really good feel for the narrator. But at that point, then you can round it down. Well, if you want to pick one, right, or just pick 1 or 2 to narrow it down, at that point you can. But I picked 5. And you pick a section of your book that you want them to record, so you can actually hear them reading your text, and then you have a much clearer idea who is going to work. And I think it defaults to, I think, the introduction of your book, unless you actively select something. But I decided to actively select something because the book is a mixture between kind of jargon and theory and technical terms, but also the, you know, kind of slightly adult humor, if you want to put it that way. So I wanted to get a chapter which actually had all of that, to see how the narrator could handle the switch in tone, and, you know, going from a lighthearted joke to some kind of technical marketing speak. And so I picked a chapter which would kind of capture all of that over the space of a few pages, and asked 5 of them to record that for me. When I heard my 5 shortlisted candidates, there was 2 that stood out straight away, and one of them was a man actually, and the other one was Melinda, who I ultimately chose. But yeah, no, Melinda just nailed it actually. And like the first time I heard her sample, her recording of my text, I knew she was the right narrator. Actually, to tell the full unvarnished truth, as soon as I read her bio, I suspected she was going to be my narrator, because she has a really, really interesting bio. Aside from working as an actress and recording a lot of audiobooks and working as a narrator for quite a while, and I think theatre as well, she was also appeared in Celebrity Deathmatch as Pamela Anderson. I don't know if you remember Celebrity Deathmatch, the old MTV show. And I think she was in Grand Theft Auto 5. I think she played Paris Hilton in that. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, she's probably going to be my narrator. But it ended up she was by far the most suitable anyway. Like, she just had the right kind of tone, the right kind of irreverence reading the text, that I knew she was going to be the narrator almost straight away. I was actually painting, not like, you know, a landscape or anything. I was painting some walls, and it was actually the perfect thing to have in the background. And but then every so often I would hear, you know, there wasn't that many errors to catch, or things that I want to pronounce differently or whatever. But every so often I would catch one and I'd be covered with paint. So I'd be like trying to hit the space bar with my elbow or something, and then, you know, going and wash the hands, and because you have to note down the time. You know, it's just so the narrator can get to it quickly. You know, chapter 5, 30 seconds in, and then, you know, whatever you want to flag for that. The setup, like, cause I don't know how other companies handle this, because I didn't go through the regular process with my first ever audiobook. But the system on Findaway is pretty cool. Like the interface is pretty slick, because you can actually put in comments by chapter. So like the audiobook is broken down into, you know, if you've 30 chapters, it'll be 30 or so separate files, and each one is there in the interface, and you can put in comments directly. And each time you comment on a chapter, the narrator gets emailed. So they know straight away that you're looking at it and reviewing it, and they can reply underneath, asking for clarification. For example, like, if you something like my surname, for example, I had to record a little sample of me saying it so she knew how to pronounce it. Or if there was a word that I wanted pronounced differently or stressed differently, I could link to an example of it, and we could kind of chat in each chapter in the little comment area. So that was quite handy. And the whole system works surprisingly well. I didn't think it was going to be that slick, but it was really cool. Mostly on my side, just because of my lack of experience sometimes held things up a little bit. I didn't realize, for example, I think, the narrator told me right away that when she was going to be available to do the recording. So there was a couple of things I wanted to change in terms of some things about the book file, because with a non-fiction book, you're often linking to things, directly from the ebook. You might be linking to various websites or a resource with more information on something. And that's obviously very difficult to do with an audiobook. So I had a little bit of thinking to do about how I was going to handle that. And what I ended up doing was building a page on my website, a resources page just for audiobook listeners, and something with an easy URL that the narrator could read a couple of times. But it was little things like that I hadn't uploaded the final file and made a few things. Because the narrator wasn't available until June, I didn't realize that the narrator would actually like to look at the text in advance and kind of prepare themselves before they actually do the recording. Well, my favorite thing about the experience was how surprisingly high touch it was. For example, when I selected one of the narrators that I was interested in, someone from Findaway emailed me straight away to say that narrator would be unavailable until September, and would I like to select someone else instead. There was a personal touch the whole way along. If I dropped the ball in terms of uploading revisions by a certain time, someone would email me and go, "Hey, just in case this slipped through the net, the narrator's waiting for someone, waiting for you to upload the file." It felt like humans were involved in the process all the way along, and they actually cared about the experience you were having.